Shaza, as you know, world leaders gathering for UNGA. It's an important time. We're emerging from the pandemic. We're still facing the climate crisis, but obviously you have some issues there with the World Food Program around the globe. Can you talk to us about some of the critical issues you're facing?
First of all, thank you so much, Mike, for having me on the program. Of course, the world is dealing with a massive crisis at the moment. And one of the key messages that we're bringing to UNGA this year is the record level of hunger. Hunger rates have soared due to multiple factors. That includes conflict, climate change. The regularity of climate extremes is becoming more and more frequent. We have, droughts, floods, natural disasters. So all that has led to hunger rates rising to record levels. And at the same time, we are dealing with a very crippling funding crisis of a historic proportion. And this is making people, suffer the consequences. We're already seeing the consequences on the ground, but the consequences of what may happen in the future with cuts is really, really bad. So our key message is that we need everyone to step up and support and help organizations like WFP reach the people that it needs to help and support and that needs our help.
And on the ground, you mentioned, we're seeing it on the ground. And recently, I know I read that in Afghanistan, now it's a choice between serving the hungry and the starving. I mean, the budget shortfall is that stark. Can you talk to us about, people who go into your line of work, it's this commitment to help, to be kind of handcuffed in that way has got to be very difficult.
That's exactly it, Mike. I mean, we are being put in a very horrible situation where whatever funds we get, we are directing that to the people who are starving. But the consequences of that is that people who are already suffering from hunger are slipping deeper into more acute and severe levels of hunger. So these cuts have severe consequences. Some of them are very life-threatening. And at the same time, we don't have the time of the world to act. We need urgent funding and resources as soon as possible. And the problem as well is that apart from, saving lives, the issue is that all the achievements that were done in the past few years fighting hunger, those are at risk of being reversed. So this is what we're talking about when it comes to the impact of these funding shortfalls on the livelihoods of people.
And, I think about what you've been talking about, with the issues of drought and these climate events that we're seeing everywhere, which kind of dominate the news cycle. And people tend to forget that it's not just Afghanistan. I heard a journalist today, in fact, talking about returning from the DRC and the hunger that he's seeing there. We think about Yemen, we think about Haiti, other places like Sudan. It's like actually the little kid trying to put a finger in the hole in the dike and another one springs up somewhere else. You've got major issues out there.
Exactly. And these are the issues that are happening and we're hearing about in the news. And in some cases, some of them, recent example being Sudan, we don't hear about Sudan as much in the news. But you've got the protracted crisis, for example, Syria. We started implementing cuts inside Syria. The situation was already bad. Food prices have skyrocketed. So average people are not being able, the average salary is not able to keep up with all these changes and the developments. And then we had refugees, for example, Syrian refugees in Jordan. We were forced to cut assistance to them. So it's all over, continents, and we're really concerned about that because, some of these crises, such as the Syria crisis, just because it's been happening for a really long while, does not mean that people have actually, were able to cope or they're still not in need of assistance. It's still critical. But again, this is what we have. These are the resources that we have. And we have to, we're forced to take these painful decisions. I think the thing is, what I also want to emphasize is that we do have a plan. It's not that WFP doesn't have, we do have a plan. What we need is the resources and, of course, in many cases, access to reach the people who need our support.
Talking about resources, we were talking about Afghanistan just a moment ago. China is among the UN member countries that has sent food to Afghanistan. A delivery in July included wheat, flour, and a number of other staples, enough to support about 70,000 people for 2 months. Again, clearly that's not enough, the way you just described it. But can you talk to us about China's contributions thus far?
I think China's contributions has been very generous and helpful to WFP, as with other donors. But I think with these exceptional circumstances, we need all partners, all donors to really help us get through this crisis for the sake of the people who are bearing the brunt of this crisis. And we're talking about average women, children, civilians, elderly, so these people are paying the ultimate price, and we need all our traditional partners to step up, but we also need new partners to come in. And there's different ways to contribute. Of course, resources and funds is very critical. It's very important. You need to, there's like this fire that's happening. So the first thing when you do, when there's a fire in the home, you try to put out that fire and prevent the loss of life through interventions. However, what we also need is partnerships. We need partnerships, and China can be a great example of a partnership. There's been a lot of success in eradicating poverty in areas. So we need partners and donor governments and private sector to come join hands with WFP to find solutions, innovative solutions to some of the crises and the chronic problems that we're facing.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I mean, just to kind of emphasize that point, WFP has a history and a track record of using innovative solutions and partnering with governments and the private sector to find those solutions to deal with today's problems, whether it's flawed food systems or, making our humanitarian delivery much more efficient and streamlined.
And I was just going to say the WFP has been around for a while, but I don't think it's ever faced this triple whammy that we've seen out there. There's always been conflicts, but now you're looking at the climate crisis and also COVID, all of these combining to create this stew that's been really difficult to combat. Can you talk to us about just how tough that's been?
It's been very challenging. Obviously, I mean, you've mentioned the main factors that are the root causes for the hunger crisis that we're facing today. On top of that, you've got the war in Ukraine. We're talking about a conflict that is between two of the biggest players in food security around the world. So a lot of our wheat used to be procured from Ukraine, a lot of the fertilizers from Russia, and we're one of the largest procurers worldwide. For those who are not so familiar with WFP, we operate in over 120 countries and territories. So we have a huge presence in operational presence. And we were also faced with the same crisis of high food prices. The cost of our procurement of goods, I believe, reached up to or increased 40% between 2019 and 2023. So that is also an issue that we're facing as one of the biggest procurers of goods and services, particularly in the food sector. So it's been really tough, but we cannot lose hope. We cannot let the millions and millions of people who depend on our support, and we continue to call on the international community to come in and step up to support us, whether it's donor governments, the non-traditional donor governments, or even, as I said, the private sector and individuals. I think every single dollar counts. And right now, our humanitarian dollar is really being stretched to the limit and a breaking point.
You said can't lose hope. Does this kind of redouble your efforts in a sense? Do you sit there and just kind of look at different methods, like how can we gin things up?
Absolutely, in terms of the methods and the mechanisms. And I mean, one thing is that the way we provide assistance is really diverse. It really fits the context. So depending on the context that we're working on, this is where WFP intervenes and creates a program. So, for example, if communities were hit by a natural disaster and they don't have access to markets, then WFP sets up food distribution points where they are and distributes the food. And this is the case in many refugee influx contexts, or host countries receiving refugees, where markets are fully functional. This is where we provide them with cash assistance so that they could have more of a choice on the kinds of food that suits them and their families. It's also a win-win situation because most of the host countries that we see of massive, where they receive massive waves of refugees, are countries that they typically don't have a very strong economy. They were just getting by, before something like that will have an impact on their economy comes. So with cash assistance, we're also injecting money into these host countries. Classic example is the Syrian refugee crisis in Jordan, the refugee influx in Lebanon, and the neighboring countries. So it really depends on the context. We were one of the first people to implement a blockchain technology in the way we provide assistance. So yeah, there's various ways to do so. And we're working with a multitude of partners to achieve the goal that we want to achieve.
The new technology is helping to address an age-old problem. Thank you so much, Shaza. A pleasure talking to you. Appreciate it.